Hi, welcome to Tangled Web Weaving. My name is Grace and I would like to demonstrate today the shaft switching technique. The shaft switching technique was developed in 1968 by Peter Collingwood and outlined or given to the world in his book Techniques of Rug Weaving. However, the technique that he described in his book only worked on a loom that was like a counterbalance or a countermarch loom where the shafts are raised by cords and would not work on a jack loom. In 2001, Tom Naisley described how to build a shaft switching device that you could use on a jack loom. That was in the 2001 November-December issue of Handwoven magazine. That is what I am demonstrating today. So the pattern that I chose for this demonstration is called Samba, and it is from the it's from the November-December issue of 2020 Handwoven magazine. Samba is a weaving or a wavy pattern, and you would not be able to normally do this pattern on a standard loom where you couldn't shift the pattern between shafts 1 and 4. So shaft switching is for weft-faced woven structure in a summer-winter type pattern with two blocks A and block B. The pattern is controlled by shafts 1 and shafts 4. As you can see in the pattern that I have here, you have a dark and a light that is alternating. So the two colors that we're going to be using are controlled by shafts 1 and shafts 4. Typically, you wouldn't be able to do this on a regular loom because it involves moving the warp thread to be raised by shaft 4 or shaft 1. So if the warp thread is being raised by shaft 4, then the darker background shows, and if it's being raised by shaft 1, the lighter color shows through on the front. Now, how do you move the warp thread without cutting it or retying it? And that's not really practical for weaving. There are a couple different ways that you could do this, but if you're moving them several times, then you need a simpler way to do it. Hence the shaft switching device. So what this involves is a device that you can take and attach to your loom, and I built mine from 2 yardsticks and some eye screws and Texol cord. So the eye screws that I used are I got a package of 100 from the hardware store. They're a number 216, and they have a very small, it's hard to focus on that. They have a very small head on them that the Texol cord fits over quite nicely. I took a yardstick and I drilled holes at 1/2 inch intervals across the top, and then I screwed in the eye screws into those holes. I numbered each screw, and I had a couple extras on the end, so that kind of ignore those two. But I numbered each one 1 through 63, which are the number of warp cords that will be switched on my particular pattern. So then the next thing you do is you need to have your Texsolve cord, and my cord ended up being about 30 inches long for each one, and I needed 63 of these because that is how many warp threads that will switch. So I determined the 30 inches by measuring from the top of shaft 1 down through the heddle eye on shaft 1 back to the heddle eye on shaft 4, back up to the top of shaft 4, and back to the beginning of the top of shaft 1. I added a couple 3 inches to connect the two together, and I have a loop. I took that loop and I folded it in half, and I marked the center loop on the Texsolve cord with a permanent marker. This is where your warp cord will be threaded through instead of the heddles on shaft 1 or shaft 4. So then I took my shaft switching device, and I have 2 of these, one for shaft 4, one for shaft 1, and I attach these to the to my shafts on my loom, which here's my loom, and this is Charlotte. She's from 1974. She was built by a shop teacher, a wood shop teacher for his wife. I got her about 3 years ago, and she has worked great for me. And she has little quirks, as all of our looms do, but she has worked great for me and my purposes. So let me attach this. I've already got the one attached, as you can see, and I will attach the second one to the shaft 1, and I just use painter's tape to attach it. Some of the instructions say that this should only be about 1 inch tall and to attach it to the top. These are very thin. They happen to fit in between the shafts quite easily and nicely and don't catch, so that was just the easiest way for me to do it. So I will attach that and be right back. Okay, so I have the shaft switching device attached to shafts 1 and 4. Now I'm going to attach the Texsolve cords to make it so I can switch the warp cords, or the warp threads, between shafts 1 and 4. So the 30-inch long piece of cord that I took and cut and marked at the center, I am going to thread through the heddle on shaft 1 and then on shaft 4. Just pull that through, and I'm going to take the loop that I marked, and I'm going to center that between the 2 shafts. Now I've already got this loom warped up for my project, so this is for demonstration purposes. So once you are getting ready to thread your warp, you take the warp cords or the warp threads that are going to be switched, and you take it to the right of the heddle on shaft 4 through the marked loop on your shaft switching cord. If I can get this through. Bring it through the marked loop on the cord and then to the left of shaft 1 heddle. Once you have them all threaded, you're going to take the 2 ends of the cord and thread them up between the shafts up to the top, and attach them at the top to each other. You can see on these that that's exactly what I have done. So for this warp cord, I have threaded it the cord goes through the heddle on shaft 4 and the heddle on shaft 1, and the warp cord is going through the Texol loop. And I've brought it up and I've tied it. At this point it looks like a lot of spaghetti, but you can see for every single, let me unhook this one, for every single warp cord that is going to be switched, I can now make it so that it is tight either against shaft 1 or shaft 4, so that when I raise shaft 4, the warp cord comes up but if I raise shaft 1, it does not. Up top, I take and I pull the cords, the Texol heddle cords, or the Texol cords, they're not heddles, but I move the Texol cords and I pull it so they're tight up against shaft 4. So down here, it's tight up against shaft 4. I did that with all of them across here, and I marked them with blue. Then I unhooked them all and I pulled them so that they're tight up against shaft 1. So you can see that same warp cord is tight up against shaft 1, and as shaft 1 raises, so will that cord. I did that again with all of these across, and I marked them with red. That way I know that I have them in the right position when I want to switch the shafts that they are functioning on. So now the fun part gets to happen, the weaving. The pattern is divided up into rectangles, and since this pattern is a dark background with a light pattern, they've reversed the pattern to make it easier to read. So for every light square, that is going to be my dark color that shows on top. For every dark square, that's going to be a light color that shows on top. And that corresponds with this. The numbers down at the bottom represent the warp threads. I have 63 warp threads going all the way across. Those are only the switched warp threads. There are warp threads on shafts 2 or 3 in between those, and those are the tie down warp threads. For each square that is black, I need to shift my warp thread to shaft 1. So I am currently on this row up here. There are no dark threads or no dark squares. So this is going to be a row where it is entirely blue going all the way across. Since this is a block pattern, the pattern is made up of 4 shots. So each one of those rectangles is 4 shots.
Significantly, because it's a fairly lightweight loom, not really a red loom, and I need to beat pretty hard to get it packed in. So, you can see that made a line of solid glue. There's still some white peeking in because it takes a bit for it to get packed in with each successive line of left. So now, my pattern says that I need another line of solid glue. So I can get another 4 picks. Almost a dry one. 3. It's pretty easy on this pattern to tell when you're on the wrong one. The blue starts on the left, and the white starts on the right. So if you are on a certain pick of the 4, and you are throwing the wrong color, you know you've done something wrong. So that's 4. I have blue on my left, white on my right. I'm good. Alright. So I want to show you something real quick here. I'm going to come in here to the warp. I'm going to raise shafts 1 and 2. You'll notice, let me zoom out a little bit here. You can see that all of the doubled warp cords are the ones that are raised. And if I lift shafts 2 and 4, the interim ones raise. And you can see that back here, kind of, that I instead of raising. And then shaft 2 is raising. So, now my pattern says that I need to change my shaft switching from all of them being on shaft 4 to having 14 through 24 on shaft 1. There's my pattern. So 14 through 24, I need to switch from shaft 4 to shaft 1. So I find 14, I pull up until I can put the red loop on, take it off the back blue loop, pull it up until I can get the red loop on. If I can't get it on, tug a little bit harder. If you tug and you can't get it on for some reason, it's probably because you've not taken it off of shaft 4. Even though I'm only missed by 1 loop, that is not going to be good enough. So if you can't get it to your original mark, you need to figure out why. Sometimes when you're taking these off, since they have a little lip there, they will touch the threads and not come off completely. And sometimes you just forget to take it off, and then you can't get it smooth all the way. Occasionally, I can't get it to move, and it's because these cords down here will sometimes get crossed over like this and will not allow the next cord. So if this one was crossed over maybe, and I was trying to take this one off, and it might not let it pull all the way back or all the way forward. So just be certain that you can get it all the way forward or all the way back.
Four more. This is not a fast weaving process. The maximum number of picks that or number of blocks, I should say, that you will get in a sequence without having to stop and switch shafts is 3. So that's 12 picks. And then you'll have to stop and switch your shafts to the next selection. that's 8. My pattern now says that I need to put shafts 14 through 24 back to the back on shafts 4, and then move shafts or cords 37 through 43 to shaft 1. So we will just go ahead and do that. Here is a good example of what I was talking about earlier. So I could almost get that up to the mark, but not quite. I've removed it from here, but down here it is still not releasing from shaft 4. So I come back up to the top and I realize that, oh, let's see if I can get it to focus. That's a little closer than it wants to be. There we go. It's really hard to see, but there's a small thread that has caught and won't release. So I can either just kind of push it down and unhook it from this small space that is at the bottom of this loop to bring it off. Or if it's a small enough thread, I could just break it. But the more of those that you break, the more likely you are to ruin your Texel cord. So I'm glad that happened so that I could demonstrate in real life how that happens. There's 40, 41, 32. Sometimes they take some effort to get through. Okay.